Okay, so let's just talk about geometry basic stuff. So, this is the intro. I'm not gonna. We're just gonna talk about a bunch of like definitions, and you're not gonna be tested on it. I'm not gonna ask you for that, but I want you to let's just start from somewhere and let's just build up to where we're moving towards. So, what's the unit, the basic unit of all geometry? It's a point, right? And what is a point? It's basically simply a location in space, right? It's no dimensions. So we can take a point and, plot it. Right, so that's a point, and you know about points. You've done it when you do graphs. Plot the point 3, 4. So it's a place, has no dimension. It's just a location. Um, well, what can we do at that point? Well, from your art class, you draw pictures, you make paths. So I can animate the point, right? So that is a path, right? That is a path. It's basically a movement, a point moving. That's a path. So the question is, where can the path go? What can go up and down? It can go to the right or the left. It can go in, also it can go in a circular motion, right? And so those are the paths. Now, in our class, in math classes, we don't talk about paths. We're not going to be talking about paths until like 11th, 12th grade. But in this class, we talk about curves. So you don't make this path. What you did in your math classes, you just plotted a bunch of points. So you plot a bunch of points and you connect the points with a curve. So last year, you plotted a bunch of points and you connected it with what we called a line. In another class, we're going to plot a bunch of points and we're going to connect them with a curve that we call a parabola. In another class, you technically, plotted a bunch of points around a radius and you connected it with a curve, the path you moved, but we call that the curve. So a curve really is like a set of points, and kind of like we connect them with a path. That's the idea. So once again, you draw paths, but we talk about that in this class. After plotting all the points, we talk about it as a curve. Okay, well, what kind of curves do you deal with? Well, we just spoke of our first one, a line. So we have a straight curve. What is the idea of a straight curve? And that's points that, what do you think? Because we plotted points, but how do we plot points for specifically for a straight curve? Points that have one direction, right? One direction. What do you think a line is? What do you think a line is? Well, a line is a straight curve with a curve in one direction. And what? And its opposite, right? So we start here. You remember last year when you were plotting a line and you'd start with the y-intercept and you'd go up, y equals 2x plus 1, right? Let's go to graph. Let's show the grid, right? And so you'd start at the y-intercept, right? Should we move this? Can I move this? Yeah, hold on one second. let me move here. Perfect. So y equals 2x plus 1. So the first thing you would do is you would plot the y-intercept at 1. And then what was the next thing you did? You looked at the slope and you go, okay, up 2 to the right 1, up 2 to the right 1, up 2 to the right 1. And you get your ruler out and you draw in the path, right? And that was one way, right? What do we call this, actually? While we're here, let's make another definition. This is known as a ray. A straight curve with one endpoint. Right? So we have the straight curve, but there's an endpoint here. Now, what was the next? Let's get back to our line. What was the next thing we did in the class? You said, okay, you know what? I got it. Well, some teachers would say, oh, just extend the line. But let's take it up the next notch because we want to plot a bunch of points. What do we know about the points at the other way? Well, it's the opposite. If we went up 2 to the right 1, we went down 2 to the left 1, down 2 to the left 1, down 2 to the left 1. And we extended it in the opposite direction. That's the idea. So a line is a straight curve in one direction and its opposite. You could argue that a line is a ray and its opposite ray. This is a line. And so we have a line, we've defined a ray. What's next? Well, let's define segment. How do we define a segment? Well, I'm going to change the color. Display. No, I don't want the whole thing. Gotta figure this out. There we go. I'm gonna make the color. Let's make this. How about blue? Right, because we like that. That's cool. What's a segment? How do we draw a segment? And we know that's a segment, but I can only define something based on previously defined words. So, how about a part of a line with two endpoints and all points, in between. I need you to start thinking about the things you see in math class as a bunch of points. So over here, this is endpoint A, this is endpoint B, and in between A and B is an infinity of points. That's the idea of a segment. Okay, let's move on. No, I want to change the color. Perfect. Let's go back to black. Next thing. So we've created all these definitions, but we started with a point, we moved the point, we moved to point in one direction, we moved in this opposite direction. Okay, let's get back to curve. What kind of curve? So if let's say I draw a bunch of curves, and here's a curve, here's a curve. Oh, what's that above? Here's a curve, and here's a curve. So the question I ask the students is, which curve, what curve stands out? How are they the same? How are they different? Well, this is an open curve, and these are closed curves. What's the difference? Well, we know we're back to paths. Oh, there's our path. Look at that. The idea is, should I stop it? Let me pause that. Oh. So the idea is that the beginning and end point are different, and the beginning and end point endpoint are the same. Okay. So, but in this class, we're interested in the closed curves. Obviously, triangles, circles, rectangles, pentagon. That's what we're interested in. Now, we can break these closed curves off into two different sections. What do you notice about the first one? Well, we're interested in this one on the right. We're interested in, you know, oh, sorry. Sorry. We're interested in circles. We're interested in triangles. We're going to be taking a lot of interest in pentagons. These are known as simple closed curves. What do you think? They're closed curves with what? With no intersections. They start and begin at the same point, and they don't like cross each other. And now we're almost there. We're done with today's lesson, which is simply the last definition, which is a polygon, which we're going to be studying mostly in this class. What is a polygon? It's a simple closed curve consisting of, do we have a definition? Do we have a word? Of segments. And so that's the end. And it's not really a lesson, no homework, just an intro. The idea is we started from a point, we moved that point around a path or a curve, we drew in the path, but the idea is we came up with, that's where, once again, we came up with all these things just from a point, and that's the whole idea. So watch the video, and we'll pick up in the next class. The following week, we'll start a lesson.